All right, guys, we're going to talk about pricing guides today, and I've had a bunch of super awesome, brave volunteers who have offered to send in their pricing guides that they send to couples when they inquire, and have offered to have them critiqued here. So first of all, thank you so much to everyone who sent in your pricing guide. I know it's like nerve-wracking to like put something out there and ask for advice on it. Promise I'll be like super helpful. I really just want you guys to be able to showcase and communicate your value really well, and for couples to, when they get this information from you, just feel like so needing to get on the phone with you so that you can close a sale and get a contract with them and get more bookings. So there are a lot of steps to the booking process, and I know that I've gone over this in a couple of other videos about, you know, what your website looks like really matters as far as how many people are going to contact you through your site. How you respond to that initial inquiry form matters a whole bunch. We went over that in kind of my video about not getting ghosted. So what your initial inquiry email says, and a lot of times that initial inquiry email will have this link to your pricing guide. And so you know, what all of these pieces look like can affect your booking rate like so much. And so if you're feeling like you're not converting the inquiries that you're getting ghosted a lot, like it could be many different parts of this whole process. So like kind of zooming in and examining each one here is kind of what I'm trying to do. I will say though that, you know, it's not just your website, it's not just your initial inquiry email, it's not just even your pricing guide either. It also is how, you know, how you do the phone call and what your process looks like, how communicative you are, how easy you make it for your couples. So those are things to really consider. So we're going to zoom in on the pricing guide piece of this today, and go over some pricing guides that people have sent in, and also just go kind of over in general what is a pricing guide, why you should have one. I think that, yeah, that is something that I realized through doing this exercise of asking people to send me their pricing guides, or more rather like drop a link to their pricing guides, is actually, first of all, I should mention it's important to have a pricing guide, and probably why, because there are a significant amount of photographers that I figured out through this exercise don't have pricing guides, either just like send a blurb of text in an email, or it's just like a one little screenshot of something, and that's like all that's being sent to clients for pricing. So I think after seeing this video, you guys will see like how amazing and effective a good pricing guide can be, and how it can not only get you more bookings, but get you higher priced bookings, and really attract your ideal client to you even more. So let's back up in the process just slightly and talk about why you need a pricing guide first of all. So I think there were several photographers confused when I asked to send in pricing guides, and they sent me the link to the pricing page on their site. And every business is different. Every business model is different. So again, what I'm talking about today is very specific to elopements and small weddings, and it probably applies a lot to big weddings as well. But if we're talking about a highly emotional purchasing, a highly emotional, personalized decision-making process, and that has to do, you know, that's the type of decision-making process that we're going through for elopements and for intimate weddings and for big weddings. But I only shoot intimate weddings and elopements. That's like my area of specialties, area of expertise with education. So that's what I'm going to focus on. And so, so why should you have a pricing guide? So I think, and people could debate for a very long time about whether you should have any pricing information, or how much pricing information you should have on your site. I'm a huge fan of A/B testing everything. I don't like to guess about what's the best approach to do something. So if I am curious about something, I test it. So I have tested for my site, for my, you know, the amount of traffic I get to my site versus the amount of people who end up contacting me. I have found that it's absolutely the best to have starting prices on a site. And I know there's a lot of photographers that disagree with that, that would way prefer to not have any prices on their site, or to have absolutely full pricing, every single tiny little minute detail laid out. And so I think there's several reasons for why starting pricing works really well First of all, if you don't have any pricing on your site whatsoever, it can definitely detract couples from even contacting you. People are just really busy, even people, and I think especially people that have a decent budget, that have a lot of money to invest in a photography experience. They just want to know what they're getting into. They want to get information quickly. They don't want to like be delayed. And like, I know that a lot of photographers have a process of like not having any pricing on their site and not giving couples any information, not even a ballpark of price until they're on the phone with them. And that is one sales strategy. And I know that it works well for some photographers. I think specifically for the eloping market, eloping couples who are really trying to figure a lot of things out. They're doing a ton of Googling, a ton of like self-figuring things out. They're not necessarily being like recommended a photographer from a venue or another vendor or from a friend necessarily. They're probably like the only person that they know that has ever eloped, and they're just trying to figure it out. And I like to make that process of figuring it out as easy as humanly possible. So having starting prices on a site gives couples, one, it will vet your inquiries. So you're going to be getting more qualified people who are actually filling out your contact form. So you won't be wasting your time with leads who just, aren't even in the ballpark. If they had a $300 elopement budget and you started at $3,000, them filling out that contact form is not helping you or helping them. It's just wasting your time. And so having a starting price that will give people a ballpark, gives them the information that they're looking for. They know that they're somewhere roundabout close, and that it's worth them moving forward in the process and having a conversation with them. So going to so having starting pricing on your site, and especially it's super important. I've been over this in the website critique video, but having a call to action button right there, or having a contact form right there, making it incredibly easy that when someone has seen your starting pricing and they know, okay, I'm in the ballpark or I am not, that they can start to fill out your contact form and get in touch with you immediately. So that is key. There are other photographers that like putting everything, literally every single aspect, any possible question, like everything that would be in a very detailed pricing guide on their site publicly. And that is another approach. And so I know some photographers, when I did this exercise, just sent me links to their pricing page because they have it all listed out there in like extreme detail, and that is one option. I think there are a couple of drawbacks to that. One, it can be really overwhelming, especially if you offer many different types of things and if you offer them in different areas. So let's say like you have, different hour packages and also different regions, and all of that costs different depending on where you are. It can be a lot, and it can be really overwhelming for someone to navigate that first on your site. I think it's just not quite the right time in the process to be doing that. And that has been shown in when I've been doing this testing on my site of what results in like the highest volume of well-qualified inquiries, and it's with starting prices. So having information there, but information that's going to incentivize them to contact you. The awesome thing, and I've been over this with initial inquiries too, but the awesome thing about when a couple contacts you and gives you specific information about when and where and in what way they are having an intimate wedding or an elopement, you have so much more information to be able to send them a like beautifully, a really beautifully customized pricing guide. So I actually have four different pricing guides for myself. So between Amber, Tori, and I, we have 12 different pricing guides. And because they're based on location, and they're based on like type of event. And so so when someone reaches out to contact us, we will know, okay, like you're eloping in Colorado and it's going to be an intimate wedding. Here's the Colorado intimate wedding pricing guide for me. So it is handcrafted, like tailored to that person. So the initial inquiry email is tailored to that person, and they basically have a custom pricing guide that shows you these are your options specifically for you because you're inquiring about Colorado for this thing. And you can't do that just on your own site. Like if we were to put all of the information, all the different types of pricing for every single location around the world and every option possible it would be absolutely overwhelming. And, you know, if anyone has kind of looked at choice theory before, or, you know, learned about how people make decisions, if people get overwhelmed with choice, they just like mentally shut down and they're just like, nope, this is too much, can't figure it out, I'm moving on. And they bounce off your site, they don't contact you. So less is more, but too little is also possibly not ideal either when it comes to pricing. So there are a whole bunch of fields of thought from photographers in all different industries and different types of photography, like around if you should have or how much information you should have about pricing publicly on your own site. I absolutely recommend testing it. I have found, for me specifically, and you know, with having a wide range of experience in the elopement market, that having starting prices on your site is important. But when someone inquires with you, they are going to need more information than that. And that is what the role of a specific pricing guide that you send to a couple after they inquire with you is. So hopefully backing up a little bit explains that. So really that's kind of the first, the first point that I wanted to make here is that you should have a pricing guide. It's important, it matters, it can do wonders for you and do a whole lot of work of selling you up front before you even get on the phone with a couple. And so I am just gonna start by showing my pricing guide. Let me pull it up here. Cool, so this is for, that's my destination developments. So here we go. Share. Okay, cool. So this is a link that someone would get when they inquire with me, let's say about a destination elopement. So let's say I got an inquiry for an Iceland elopement for next year. So they would get this beautifully crafted, personalized, customized initial inquiry email, and then a link to this would be attached. So let's take a second to talk about format with pricing guides, because I was sent a massive, massive variety of formats, and some of them work a lot better than others. I'm a huge fan of having a pricing guide that is a hidden page on your own website for several reasons. One, you'd never have to worry about uploading or downloading an attachment of a PDF or a JPEG or anything ever, especially if you're on the road or if you're ever dealing with Wi-Fi. And also consider the person who is receiving it may need to download it or wait for it to load. You know, PDFs and JPEGs are just super, super clunky. Also, adding large attachments to emails can really freak out email servers, have your stuff end up in people's spam boxes, and that's absolutely not what you want when you have an initial, when you have an inquiry. You want to be able to get in touch with them for it to be as easy as possible for them to open up whatever you are sending them. And so having a link instead of an attachment is huge. And I also am a big fan of just doing a link on your own side, because yes, you could upload a PDF and send a link to a PDF instead of an actual attachment. But the thing about PDFs is it's very hard to make an effective PDF that both works super effectively on a desktop and on a mobile. And so really considering the device that someone is viewing your pricing on, probably more than half the time it's on a phone actually. And you can test that if you have kind of your Google Analytics or your, you know, Hotjar kind of in your site. But the nice thing about this is, 1 second. The nice thing about this is that it is responsive. So, so basically, it looks great on a desktop, but on a phone, it would also work as well, because it's just a page of a site like any other site. So it will be mobile responsive and look great on a phone and load quickly on a phone, and look great on a desktop and load quickly on a desktop. So that, you know, so there were several people that had them as hidden unlinked pages on their site. What I mean by that is it's a page on your website, but it's not one that you can find through navigating through different links on your site. It's not in that, you know, pricing tab of your site. It is a different link. It's an orphan page. A couple of things to know. It's important that you index these pages from Google, especially if you make multiple versions of them, because you are not going to want to have duplicate content on your site, and it's not going to be great for your SEO if you have 10 different versions of the same content on your site. So no indexing it is important. The other thing that I'll say that I think is super helpful is to get rid of the navigation on the page, so that when someone opens it, they're not like, wait, this is a page of a site. Like, I'm on their website, I'm looking for their pricing guide, I'm looking for their pricing information. So I found that just removing the header portion, just removing the navigation from that page of the site makes it really simple. So basically this becomes a really effective landing page. So you'll notice there's nowhere for anyone to click except for the call to action buttons, which are these orange buttons that connect actually to my Calendly for people to schedule a call. So basically, they're not going to get lost in navigation, looking around for other stuff on the site. They are going to scroll down, get the information in the order that I'm trying to communicate it, and they're going to have these call to action buttons popping up everywhere, prompting them to actually schedule a call with me. So what's super cool about this is that after sending an initial email and then opening this link so many times, like without even emailing me back, I'm getting clients to just schedule calls and like just get on my calendar. And I get them on the phone, sell myself, my services, and boom, contract, they're booked. It's just become super, super streamlined. So that has worked super well for me. And then let's go ahead and talk about kind of structure of a pricing guide and what is really helpful. And I'm going to go over some great examples of others, people's who have sent them in. But basically, your pricing guide is a really key opportunity to talk directly to the couple who is inquiring with you. So it's important to tailor it depending on their inquiry, which is why I have multiple versions of the same pricing information. So this is a destination pricing guide, so there's no like extra travel fees because we know they're wanting a destination elopement outside of the US. So I have standard travel fees that's just been added and rolled into the package so that couples aren't feeling like they're paying for travel. I've been over that in the pricing video of how to price elopements, but this is kind of where you see it all actually playing out in the sense that it's so simple, it's so streamlined. Nobody's wondering like, what is it going to cost? They're not like waiting on a travel quote from me or adding a travel fee to a package and like trying to and trying to figure that out. It's all super straightforward. So it starts with kind of a welcome and talking about me, telling a little bit about myself, and also more than that, like why I care about elopements, and more importantly, what that means for them, what I can do for them, the value that I'm going to bring to their day. And talking about my why and connecting with them, talking about why having more than just a couple of hours of coverage for an elopement is super important and really helpful, and walking through a process of how this process works, making it super simple, breaking it down, making it really easy to understand. So all that information is coming first, meaning anyone who is opening this pricing, looking for pricing information, whatever they have to scroll past, like that is valuable real estate. So if you need to communicate, so it's important to value stack upfront all of this information, meaning giving your client all the information about how valuable you are and how you're more valuable and different than other photographers that they are looking at. And so if you just literally state your prices in your pricing guide, that's a big missed opportunity for connecting with them more on a personal level. So this information about me talks about how much I travel, because a couple having a destination elopement is likely going to connect with that more. On my Colorado version of this pricing guide, it talks more about how I've lived in Colorado my whole life and my experience in Colorado and how much I love the mountains and hiking and backpacking here. So you can literally tailor your the about section, the welcome section, all the things you can help them with should be tailored, thinking about like the target audience of this specific pricing guide. And so that's why I'm a huge fan having multiple pricing guides, because each one can be so personalized, so special, and really simple, and make it so clear. Because you know, if you have a couple who's looking for a destination elopement in Iceland, like your local pricing doesn't apply to them, and it's just distracting and it's just confusing. And so having multiple versions just solves a whole lot of problems and confusion up front. So then we get to the section that has the pricing information. And so I've talked about this before with how to price elopements, but it's super important, one, to list your highest prices first. So there were some pricing guides that I looked at that people did the reverse order. They started with their lowest and then went up from there. So there's something called comparative pricing, which is the idea that, you know, if you give someone a big price right off the bat, comparatively, like the price that is lower than that looks cheaper than if you had everything in the reverse order. So for example, if I had these in the reverse order, so if like the very first price that someone saw was $8,000, it'd be like, okay, $8,000, but do we have anything else? Oh gosh, nope, $9,800, 11, okay, yeah, nope, can't do it. Like, whereas if you start off with like $13,800 as a starting price, you know, comparatively 11 is less, and then 9, and then you get to 8 and think, wow, that's a lot more reasonable. And it's just how our brains work with pricing. And so the order in which you're presenting your packages or collections or whatever you're calling them is super important. It's definitely list your highest prices first, because comparatively, your lowest package will look way, way cheaper. So that matters a ton. I also think, I'm a huge fan, and I've also tested it multiple times, of having 4 packages. I know a lot of people go with 3. Psychologically, most people in the world are middle package people. There are people who always go for the highest of everything. There's just people who, you know, to move through life like that, they always go with the maxed out, upgraded of anything that they purchase ever, and they're always probably going to go for your top package. There are people who, you know, are really stretching and will, you know, always go for a lowest package too. But by far and away, most people psychologically, it's that Goldilocks principle of like, oh, that one's like a bit too much. That one's not enough. This one's just right. So that's kind of the Goldilocks principle of having different packages and different collections. Most people are going to be drawn towards the middle. Cool thing about having 4 packages is that there's 2 options in the middle. So you have 2 different options for all those middle package people. And so 4 has worked super well. It's important to know that the package that you feel like you want to book the most needs to be here in the middle. Should not be the top package. There should be a package above the package that you want to book the most, because it comparatively will make the package you want people to actually book look a lot less expensive. So, so with this pricing strategy, most of the couples for destination elopements end up booking 12 hours or a day and a half, so 12 plus 4. And I think it has a huge amount to do with how these packages are structured. Also looked at Hotjar recordings of these pricing guides, which is another cool thing you can do if you have your pricing as a internal unlinked page of your website. You can actually see how people are navigating through your pricing guide and what they do. And it's great to be able to see people like click through and like read the information. And, you know, a lot of people just kind of end up hanging out here for a long time at collection 2 and 3. It's just psychologically where people usually end up. So that was a little bit about why you should have a pricing guide, how you should have multiple pricing guides. I'll always offering your higher price first, that kind of price anchors, and everything else feels like a bargain. In comparison, having 4 collections works really well, especially if you feel like there's like 2 different options that fit most people and are like the services that you like to offer and want to book the most. Having one above that you don't necessarily need everyone to be booking it. That's totally fine. It just stands out as like there is something more, and than the package that you actually want people to book. It just psychologically makes them feel like they're getting a bargain rather than them going for a top package, since most people are middle package people. So one more note on kind of charging for travel. I know I talked a ton about this in the pricing, in the how to price elopements video, but I'll state again how important it is that if you want to travel and if you want to book lots of destination elopements, that rolling in your travel fees is absolutely the way to go. And so I know that there's a big difference about traveling to one location versus another, but you can make as many different pricing guides as you want. So if you want a Iceland specific elope, like you create 10, you could create 12, you could have a Iceland specific. So you could know roundabout, this is exactly what it's going to cost for me to travel to Iceland. I'm going to create a Iceland elopement pricing guide, have my exact travel rolled in. For me personally, traveling to Iceland or Switzerland or most places in Europe, it's pretty, I think for destination elopements, most of the places I'm traveling to are Central South America or Europe, not as much in Africa, in Asia. And so for me, just having one price for international stuff that pretty much covers it, based on my experience with traveling, it works great for me. But if you are not booking that, if you're not booking that many, and if like undercharging for travel on one elopement is going to put you in a bad financial position, then yeah, if you get an inquiry for an elopement in a specific place, like create a specific pricing guide for that area, and roll it into your pricing. I'll pull this back up. Again, you can see how this looks. So someone looking at a destination elopement with me, they're going to see one price and see that my travel is included here, for every single one of these collections. They're not having to add on travel fees. They're not having to wait and ask for a travel quote. Those are all big barriers to people booking you. And it's that Amazon Prime principle. Nobody likes to pay for shipping. If you look at something that's $30 with free shipping, you're much more likely to buy it than something that's $25 with $5 of shipping. Like, people hate paying extra for shipping. And I actually definitely think that it applies to wedding photographers. I've booked so many more destination elopements since I've rolled in my pricing, since I've rolled in my travel fees. So people just like stuff to be simple. They don't have to worry about it, and so if you're wondering how to price travel, going out and saying, okay, Iceland, let me look at 8 different times of year I could travel to Iceland and price out all of flights, lodging, rental car, gas, food, airport parking, dog sitting, etc. for 4 or 5 days, and look at it at 8 different times a year. Add it all together and then divide by 8, and you'll get like an average price of traveling to a specific area. You can do that for multiple different areas. I've found that with the amount that I travel and the amount that I lump in shooting multiple elopements on a single trip, that I can travel anywhere in the world for less than $1,500. And so that's what's rolled into my international pricing. So it's worked out really well, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, but over the course of a year, that's just made it super, super simple on my couples. So that works really well. Rolling in travel is great. Let's go ahead and jump in and do some looking at some other people's pricing guides, because there's some great ones and a lot of people sending in stuff, and I super appreciate everyone who sent their stuff in. I won't be able to get through all of them, but I pulled a few that I thought were good examples of a few things that I wanted to talk about. So here we go, sharing my screen. Okay, I'm gonna jump in the Facebook group really quick, because there were a few people that actually just dropped their pricing guides on this post, and here we go. There were a lot of people that had pricing guides similar to this, that kind of, this is what they send when someone inquires. So this would be like attached to your initial email. So this one has a couple of things that I want to point out that could be improved for sure. One, having this in, the format, Attachments aren't ideal. If you kind of think about how small the text would be if this was on the screen of a phone, like we can even show you how small it would be. It would be super tiny. Oh, yeah, it would be very small if we were trying to read all of this on a phone. That could be super difficult. So having a design that's responsive helps a ton with desktop and with mobile. Again, this person also has their pricing listed lowest first. And so by comparison, this 3350 looked so much higher after you see an 1850 number first. People are, yes, always drawn to lower prices. So if you give it to them first, they're just going to be more and more reluctant to look at anything higher than that. Whereas if you reverse the order, they will be relieved as they scroll down and feel like, okay, good, at least it's not like, you know, people are going to be much more likely to book you for a middle package if you have your prices in the reverse order. So just switching that would be huge, changing the format here. And I also think there's just a bunch of missed opportunities for communicating so much more value. You know, having a more customized about section, telling about what experience they are getting, all the ways that you're going to help them throughout the process. You know, reviews from couples, all of those kind of things could be really built into a really effective pricing guide. And this one is just, you know, turning on people's rational thinking brain when you want people to be making decisions emotionally, and finding the photographer that's really right for them and really connecting with you and being like, I have to have you, I have to work with you as a photographer. So here's another example of pretty much the exact same thing. One, having the pricing in the reverse order would help significantly. Two, it is just really, it's so bare bones. I have no idea what's included with any of these options either. Like, what does that mean? What am I actually getting as a client if I got this information? I don't think I would be any more enlightened than if this information was just kind of sitting on a website. You know, when someone contacts you and is asking for more asking for more information, it's your opportunity to educate and to, you know, and to build kind of connection and to build connection and trust with them. And this just doesn't do it. The other thing would be having these kind of very odd numbers in the pricing. It's called charm pricing. So if you've ever been to a store, you probably see lots of things priced $19.99 and, you know, $79.99. That's called charm pricing. And it's not really meant to be for luxury goods. Luxury products and things that you want people to feel are valuable should be at round number pricing. So this person isn't doing charm pricing, but it also just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It feels really like random to have like 136 and then 408 and then 816. You know, putting round numbers makes your pricing seem more firm. Also, you also get less people asking you for discounts if your prices seem like, you know, they're at reasonable round numbers and they make sense. It's like, yep, it's $2,000. Like, whereas you put 1,987, it's like, okay, like, why 87? It just seems, you know, like your prices are more negotiable if you don't have round numbers. So lots of things that could be improved there. So jumping in, so when I had people email me pricing information, there were several people who sent stuff like this, whereas like this was their pricing guide, you know, just text inserted into an email. So the issue with this is if this is going in your initial email, this is going to be the only information that people zero in on. Is it like they're going to go straight for those numbers and not look at anything else? You're not going to read your super sweet customized response that you sent to them. It's like my eyes, and immediately also because the numbers of the text are the biggest text on this entire page. Like, I just can't not look at them. My brain is like seared in, these numbers are being seared into my brain right now. And also, of course, the fact that they're in the opposite direction. The opposite order, starting with 2,500 and going up to 6,000. The other thing I want to mention about this is their pricing is based specifically on, it looks like mostly by number of people in the event. And so really there's just a big missed opportunity for sending a couple customized information. You know, there should be enough information in your contact form to know like what type of wedding is someone having. Are they eloping, or are they having a big wedding? And if they're eloping, you're sending them any information about your big wedding price, and that's just completely irrelevant, and it'll, you know, could potentially make them question whether, you know, you are the right photographer for them. Whereas if they are sent information that only applies to them, it's so much more clear. It helps people like understand it helps people understand the information easier. There's a great quote I ran across the other day that people don't buy like the products that are the cheapest or necessarily the best, but they buy what they can understand the fastest. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that statement, in the sense that, you know, going into a process of booking a wedding and finding vendors and finding a photographer, it's a whole new world for couples who have never done this before, which is most couples. You know, they have no idea what they need, what they're looking for. They're looking for someone to come alongside them and say, here, I will help you. I'll tell you exactly what you need. I'm an expert. And so just like kind of throwing all of the information out there and saying like, you figure it out. Here's like my 18 different offerings, like, you know, find the one that is right for you, is just going to have a lot more people being like, I don't know. And, you know, running across another photographer site that's simpler, easier to understand, more clear, and feeling like, okay, that's a relief. Like I can understand this, so I'm going to do it. So that is huge. So I think this person could really absolutely have so much more value communicated, and probably start booking at a lot higher average rates if they, you know, created a pricing guide that communicated more effectively about their service, that was tailored specifically to the type of wedding or elopement that someone was having. If you shoot both weddings and elopements, 100,000,000% have different pricing guides for those, and tailor the information and the pricing in them specifically to each couple. That is huge. It's absolutely huge. And it's so easy to just duplicate and change everything. It's so simple, especially if it's just on a site. Like there's no reason not to do it. So this is someone that just sent me the pricing guide on their site. So I assume they don't have an actual conditional pricing guide that they send couples. Basically just the information on their site is all that they have. And I think their site is well laid out. I think, you know, always communicating how stuff works to people is super, super clear and super helpful. So they have the, you know, the highest prices first, which is really great. So, and, you know, knowing that most people are middle package people, that helps a ton. What I'd say is missing here is kind of like, what are the next steps? I think specifically right near whatever your pricing information is, even on your pricing guide, should have like a call to action button sitting right there. Yeah, the other thing I would say is, you know, again, rolling in travel could be huge. Basically, instead of someone seeing like, oh, I have to pay $1,000 extra for this photographer to get to this location, whereas if you roll in your travel, it just doesn't seem quite as much. People don't know how much of what they're paying is your travel, and it's not something that they think about quite as much. So I think if this person wants to book more outside of Minnesota and wants to do more international stuff, making multiple, you know, I think that this format is actually pretty good, but you know, making multiple different versions of it, going ahead and rolling in the travel fees, I think would be great, and putting a lot more call to actions. And so this contact form makes sense if it's on a website, but if you're sending something to someone who's already inquired with you, having another contact form on a pricing guide just feels like extra work. So just having a button that will enable someone to just email you or saying, you know, reply to the email, or I've found is super effective and very streamlined to just include a calendar link and have people just be able to schedule calls with you right then, and then you can get them on the phone and get them contracted. So that helps a bunch. So let's look at this one from Emma Hill. So first thing I'll say is format. Again, a lot of people sent me PDFs like this. But imagining how small this information would be if you were reading it on a phone, it would be like extremely difficult. If I was scrolling through this on a phone, I'd probably just scroll and be like, okay, where are the, okay, here it is. And I can barely read the numbers of the pricing there. So that's probably what I would be doing. So changing the format, first of all, I think would be huge. Making it something that is responsive, and then also not having to deal with an attachment would be would be great. And again, same kind of thing, having different collections based on type of event just isn't as helpful when you have a client that is specifically inquired to you about one thing, where you could so easily make 3 different pricing guides and, you know, say, oh, you're eloping, like here's 3 different packages for elopement specifically, versus like someone who's eloping only has 1 option out of the 3 for this photographer. So if you want to book more elopements, and if you want potentially for eloping couples to have more options than just 4 to 6 hours of coverage, creating a specific pricing guide could be absolutely huge. And again, we've already talked a whole bunch about travel costs. So those couple of things I think could improve this photographer's booking average huge, significantly. I think putting in FAQs are good. I think some photographers, and it's not it's not specifically on this one, but I did see some FAQs in some pricing guides that I think raised more questions than they actually answered, in the sense that really think about the questions that most couples are going to have at this beginning stage and only answer those. And also don't raise controversial questions that people aren't even asking. So I don't think FAQs about, you know, the raw images, or, you know, can I, you know, crop or put Instagram filters on my photos, like those things that, you know, are sticky situations with photographers that are really, that are controversial, that could potentially create conflict between a photographer and the client. Those FAQs do not need to be in your pricing guide. You don't need to raise those questions that nobody is asking you yet. Absolutely having good answers for them, having them in your contract. Yes, absolutely. But do you need to bring up and raise like every potential conflict or issue that you could potentially have with a client in your pricing guide before someone even gets on the phone with you? No, you don't. So think about that. I think this ready to book section is great. I think every single pricing guide needs to have information on how your process works. Make it as mind-numbingly simple as humanly possible. I think that helps a ton. And yeah, the other thing about PDFs is there's no way to put CTA buttons either, which is probably the other thing that this pricing guide is missing. So here's another one from Redwood and Sage. Again, PDF could be definitely better as a page. The thing that stuck out to me most as a big issue on this one is that, you know, how so easy it would be to make 2 different pricing guides for lifestyle versus wedding, because likely every single person who's inquiring is inquiring about only one of those things, not both. And so if I was a bride and the first pricing information that I looked at when I scrolled down through this pricing guide was a $400 full hour package, I would be very confused. And just be like, wait, what? This is not what I'm looking for. And then at first, when I first glanced at this, I didn't realize that these packages up here were for lifestyle and that one was for wedding. Like, I know it looks pretty clear, but at first I was like, wow, does she have 6 different packages? And I'm like, whoa, there's a huge price difference between the ones up here and then what's going on. And then I saw the titles. And so I think this page is definitely not doing this person any favors. It's probably like these low prices make these wedding prices look astronomically big, and they're not high. Like they're not like astronomically high wedding prices, but when you are looking at a package that's literally 10 times more than this price here, yeah, I would absolutely change that immediately and make one pricing guide for lifestyle. All the copy, all the information, your about section, everything can be tailored to the clients for lifestyle sessions, and everything on the other pricing guide can be for weddings. It's, you know, marketing is all about how the more customized, the more tailored you can make it to each individual person, hands down, it's going to be more effective than something that's a one size fits all solution. That is a like universal rule of marketing, is you want to roll out the red carpet for your target market, for and if you can, for the exact single human being that you are talking to. You know, people like to be taken care of, and people like to be, you know, communicated with in a way that is specialized and customized to them. So, so that's probably the biggest critique I had about this one that I think would help tremendously. But hopefully, I think it also really aptly demonstrates why like showing lowest prices first can really make your other prices look very scary high, even if they're not. It's just the way our brains work. So let's look at this one. So again, format is big. This photographer had an interesting approach. Basically, there's only one option in the sense they just do a price per hour. So there is a reason why almost every service or product in the world, you know, when you get more things, you get a discount. You know, there's bulk discounts in pretty much every single industry. And there's a big reason for that. Like the amount of work, well, one, pricing isn't necessarily based on how much work you put into it, but I've been over that before in the How to Price Elements video. But in this case, it is actually a good it is a good argument for the photographer to think about. If someone has booked you for a 1 hour wedding, the amount of time you spend communicating, planning, traveling, and you know, working specifically on that client for that 1 hour wedding, that isn't exactly doubled for a 2 hour wedding. It's a much smaller percentage more work to double the amount of hours, whereas the price for the couple would be double the price. So it works both ways. Like I think people in general expect pricing that like the more hours they book, the less per hour cost that it's going to be. That aligns with the amount of work that it is on a photographer's part. But even if that side doesn't matter, it incentivizes people to book more hours if you have a little bit of a break. And so if you want people to be going for bigger hour collections and booking you for more hours, having your price per hour diminish as your collections increase is absolutely going to help you get there. And so I think this person was going for something simple, but actually, I think as a couple, if I was looking at this guide, I was seeing 600 per hour, 1 hour minimum. I'd be trying to do math in my head about how many hours. I'd be wondering how many hours do I need. You know, I don't know what's normal. I don't know what's standard. So I think the photographer should absolutely test it out and try it out and start A/B testing. You know, make a new pricing guide that has, you know, set collections of set hours, maybe some example timelines, or just some information like helping a couple like land on a certain number of hours. And I think it would be really interesting to see if their average booking rate increased just by changing that information. I don't know what the average number of hours this person normally books, but I would guess that it could be a whole lot more if there were more set packages and set structures, and if there was an incentive to book more hours because it's a little bit less per hour. Let's look at this one. Scrolling through, one, format, two, sideways text is really, really hard to read. I saw that in a couple different pricing guides. Cool, so Biggest thing I think stuck out to me in this one was the size of the font. Pricing psychology and the way that people kind of see prices. If you put your price in a bigger font, you actually, like, your brain thinks that it's more expensive than if the price is in a smaller font. Our brains are weird, but that is true. That's been tested multiple times. So the biggest font on this entire page is the pricing numbers. And it's just like, my brain is thinking, wow, those are big prices because they're in a huge font. So literally just changing the font size would be huge. And again, changing the order, putting the highest collection first. But I also think instead of, you know, from a design perspective, putting some room, putting some space, you know, not putting all of the prices all in the same, like just all in the same, like one fold of a page of a site so that your eye can immediately be drawn to the lowest price. Or if you have people kind of scroll, or if there's more room, or if they're kind of clicking through to kind of see different options and they're more like pondering it, then that first high price like sinks into their brain before they see the next one and then the next one below that. So kind of adding in more room, you know, you can put images between the different prices. You want people to be thoroughly considering as they scroll down that they're getting less value and that that's being communicated. And then putting that font in a much smaller size would be super helpful as well. So here's this one, which is a page on a site again. And this looks like this isn't a pricing guide specifically, but would, you know, you can find it just through the navigation on the site here. So the biggest thing that stuck out to me on this one is I am immensely confused just by looking at this at a first glance. This kind of scrolly text is really difficult to read, and it's not where my eye is drawn first. My eye is drawn first to this bold text that's easier to read. And so at first glance, I am super confused about where stuff is going, what I am looking for. You know, and these are starting prices too. And so I wonder if this photographer has another additional pricing guide that gives more information that's a little bit more clear. But I'd say even if this information is just on their site, that breaking it up, really being conscious of the readability of fonts and just not putting, you know, 8, 9 different options in one single fold of a site would make it way more clear and people be able to understand, hopefully, like a lot better what they're actually offering. So I saw a lot of people use Issuu or another kind of PDF magazine reader to present their pricing guide. When I first started out in photography, I thought this was incredibly cool and I loved it. And I definitely had my pricing guide in this format for a long time. But I think the biggest issue here is, you know, remember, more than half the people that are going to be looking at your pricing are going to be looking at it on a phone. And look how extremely hard that is to see on that size of a device. Just super, super difficult. These kind of PDF readers are just really not mobile optimized in the slightest. And I'd say even on a desktop, actually, because of just the format of this, unless I like purposely put it into full screen mode, I would say that this text viewed just like normally on this site is pretty darn small and difficult to read, especially the smaller stuff here. This is awesome, like value stacking stuff that I think should be front and center. And I would actually probably put that information before the pricing, like before you get into it. I think, you know, like she definitely has the highest prices first, and, you know, flipping through a page helps you kind of have that first price seep into your brain before you look at the second one. So I'd say probably the biggest issue with this one is the format, the readability of the font at that small size. And I think this stuff, this information about this value that she's giving to couples, that absolutely needs to be much bigger front and center and before you get to the pricing, not kind of buried in one of the packages pages, if that makes sense. So, cool, let's look at this one. Biggest issue with this one was kind kind of readability with the fonts. It was just driving me crazy trying to read all caps, really stretched out text. From everything I've learned about web design, this is like probably the most difficult text to read, and almost all of the pricing guide was written in it. If I was a couple looking at this, it literally is painful to try to read it actually, and I would probably just completely skip it. So it's fine for really short stuff like this and like headings and titles, but having it in a whole paragraph, like this is just a massive wall of text that as a client trying to find the information I'm looking for, I'm not going to read it. And I'm sure that this is great content and putting it before the pricing is super smart. I think that that's probably the biggest issue is the format and the readability of that text, which is like in everything in this entire guide. So I think if that was changed, it could be huge for the amount of like content that, you know, people are actually consuming and actually reading, and also considering like even how more difficult this would be to read on a phone if it was like literally like that. I can't imagine trying to read that on a phone. I think everyone would scroll past it. A couple of people sent me HoneyBook links, which I actually found super interesting. I don't use HoneyBook, but this one I actually thought was pretty cool in the sense of it is responsive. You know, if I do this, you know, the text and the images change size, so it is responsive like a internal page of a site would be. So that's a plus. It's a link instead of a PDF, which is good. And I actually think like having this little table of contents is kind of fun. I think the way that she laid this out, talking about herself, talking about what she believes, how much she loves elopements, them as a team, all the value that they're creating, more information about elopements, and then going into the pricing. I think that's actually super, super well done. I think that that's definitely the way to do it, having all the information communicated first. The thing that confuses me, and again, I don't use HoneyBook, but you know, a client could potentially have never seen HoneyBook before. It confuses me that I'm like checking these things and I'm like wondering like how much it is. Like, are all of these things included in this price? Like, I'm guessing they are, but it's really not clear. These check boxes actually confuse the hell out of me. So that's probably my one critique of this is it's weird that I can check some things and leave other things off. I would wonder if a client would think, okay, are all of these included? Why can I check some and uncheck some? If I uncheck some, is the price less? It just says select at least one of the following. You must select one of the services in order to continue. So it looks like you get to the bottom of it and then you like submit or you book it, which is cool. But yeah, these check boxes up here are super confusing to me. Other than that, I actually think this HoneyBook format is pretty cool. This is another person who sent me a HoneyBook, but I don't think it's as effective because it's not responsive. It looks like they just uploaded images, which makes it no more readable on a phone than a PDF. So that's probably what I would change up about that one is find a way to use, you know, find a way to style to style it so that it works and that it's actually responsive. Cool. So I'm not going to be able to get through too many more, but I'll quickly. This one, the way this is laid out, key moment films. These links or whatever they are broken. They do not work. These other ones do. The first 4 do for some reason, but the last several don't. I just noticed that, and I figured I'll let this person know about that issue. Cool. Let's see here. What else do we have going on? Let's see if I can find one more to go over before we run out of time. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Cool. We'll do 2 more. All right, share again. All right, so PDF, I've said that about 1,000,000 times, but on the packages side, I think this shows really aptly why having one more package above this could help this photographer book this one so much more. Because right now, this one is currently the most expensive package on this page. So saying it's the most popular one, like, okay, sure, the photographer is going to say the most expensive package is the most popular one. But if you had one above it, even if it's not one that you think you would ever book, you know, it just having it sit there anchors that price and would likely make this person book this package that they want to book. I'm assuming they want to book it. They've drawn a box around it and said most popular on it so much more, versus people are probably more drawn to this middle package at the moment because most people are middle package people. So let's look at this one. Cool. So I rummaged around in this one. I said my biggest critique was these links over here, like this one in particular, going over to the elopement experience. There's no way back. Like, I am having a hard time finding a way back from. Hold on one second, guys. I'm having a hard time finding a way back from the this link. And then when I go back to this page, it's kind of grayed out. So besides that, the way the rest of this was laid out, the information that comes before the packages was super, super well done. I think this is a really good example of a really effective pricing guide. All my questions are answered. I think the biggest thing that this person could do, and it'd be super simple to change, would be to just make different pricing guides for these different locations. I think that would make just this the perfect pricing guide ever. Instead of me kind of looking at these different prices, if I'm inquiring about Michigan, I'm going to see the Michigan price. If I'm inquiring about Iceland, I'm going to see this anywhere in the world price, and that there's just no confusion there. So other than that, like, I like the way that when I'm scrolling through this, I'm seeing all the information, all the value is stacked up. And I think the rest of this is really, really well put together, actually. So that one is super good. And yeah, I think that is unfortunately all the time we have for today. I'm going to check the questions really quick, guys. So if you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Cool. It looks like we don't have any questions yet, but if you do, feel free to ask them in the group. Hopefully that was really helpful with you guys with your pricing guides, and that you're able to create something that is really customized and specialized for every couple that contacts you. So think about the inquiries that you get the most, and how you could create a pricing guide that is specific to, each of those little clumps of people, so that every single piece of text, images, the pricing is all tailored to that specific person, so that when someone opens up an initial inquiry email from you, clicks on the pricing guide, they're only looking at information that is 100% directly relevant to them. And then when they get on the phone with you, like, they already feel like, you are the perfect photographer for them because you've marketed in a really customized, really specific way. So thanks, guys, so much. I'll see you in the group. And if you're not already in the Weddings and Wanderlust Facebook group, go ahead and join. It's for adventure, elopement, and intimate wedding photographers anywhere in the world. So great. Thanks, guys, so much. I'll talk to you later.